What if I told you there's a tiny natural spice, no bigger than your fingernail, that when chewed mindfully for just 60 seconds can help reignite your energy, support healthier circulation, and awaken a biological vitality that has been quietly suppressed for years? No expensive pills, no side effects, no synthetic shortcuts. This spice is something most people already know. In fact, there's a good chance it's been sitting in your kitchen cabinet for years, overlooked, underestimated, waiting for the moment someone explained what it's actually capable of. I understand if that sounds too straightforward to be true. But stay with me, because in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how this commonly overlooked ingredient is helping men and women over 60 reconnect with their energy, their drive, and their zest for daily life, backed by real science, not marketing. By the end of this, you'll know how to use it, understand how it works at the biological level, and have a clear, step-by-step method you can try tonight. My name is Dr. William Li. I'm a physician and medical researcher, and over the course of my career, I've studied the body's most fundamental systems, how they function, how they degrade, and critically, how they respond when given the right biological signals. My work has taken me through clinical trials, laboratories, and hospitals across the world. And one thing I've learned over and over again is this: the human body has a remarkable, enduring capacity to recover, provided we give it what it actually needs. The men and women I've worked with who were struggling with low energy, reduced vitality, poor sleep, and diminished drive were not broken. Their bodies had simply lost access to the right internal conditions to function as they were designed to. And restoring those conditions doesn't always require a prescription pad. Sometimes it starts with something much more fundamental. What I'm about to share with you is not a trend, not a gimmick, and not a therapy reserved for people with money to spend. It's about understanding the biology of vitality and using one of nature's most potent, well-studied compounds to support it. If this message is speaking to something you've been experiencing, type yes in the comments below. If you're still weighing it, type maybe. Either way, I'm glad you're here, because this information could be the turning point your body has been waiting for. Before we go further, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell. The content I share here is designed specifically for people who want to live with more energy, more clarity, and more confidence as they age. You don't want to miss what's coming. Now let's talk about the spice. The spice and the science. What clove actually does the spice is clove. And the reason clove matters, the reason I find it genuinely compelling from a scientific standpoint, is not tradition or folklore. It's a specific compound called eugenol. Eugenol is the primary active molecule in clove's essential oil. It is what you taste, that warm, sharp, almost electric sensation, the moment you bite through a dried clove. And in that same moment, something important is already happening. Eugenol is absorbed rapidly through the mucous membranes of the mouth and enters the bloodstream within minutes. Once there, it acts on several physiological systems simultaneously. Let me break down the most important ones. First, eugenol is a natural vasodilator. That means it helps relax and widen blood vessels, including the small arteries and arterioles that tend to stiffen and narrow as we age. This matters enormously because vascular stiffness is one of the most pervasive and least discussed contributors to the fatigue, reduced mental clarity, and physical decline that men over 60 experience. When blood vessels narrow, less blood reaches the brain, the muscles, and the tissues that depend on reliable circulation to function. Energy drops. Focus fades. And physical performance, including intimate performance, quietly diminishes. Eugenol works by relaxing the smooth muscle cells in artery walls, allowing blood to move more freely and efficiently through the system. Second, and this is the detail that I find most scientifically significant, eugenol stimulates the production of nitric oxide. If that molecule sounds familiar, it should. Nitric oxide is the same compound that underpins the mechanism of most modern medications developed for erectile dysfunction. It is the key biological signal that tells blood vessels to expand and blood flow to increase. The critical difference between the pharmaceutical approach and what we're discussing here is this. A medication forces that response, bypassing the body's own regulatory systems. Eugenol, when delivered naturally through the act of chewing whole clove, supports the body's own capacity to produce nitric oxide gently, sustainably, and without disrupting the surrounding physiological balance. This is not anecdotal. Eugenol's vasodilatory and nitric oxide supporting effects are documented in the scientific literature, and it is one of the reasons why, in my view, this compound deserves far more attention in conversations about natural approaches to vascular health. Third, eugenol has well-established anti-inflammatory properties. Chronic low-grade inflammation is one of the most significant drivers of biological aging. It damages vessel walls, suppresses hormonal function, disrupts sleep architecture, and accelerates the decline in energy and vitality that so many men experience in their 60s and beyond. By reducing systemic inflammation, eugenol helps address one of the root causes of that decline, not just a symptom of it. Why this matters more after 60, let me be direct about what happens in the body after 60. Not to discourage you, but because understanding the biology is the first step toward changing it. Inflammation accumulates. Blood vessels become less elastic. Testosterone levels decline, sometimes gradually, sometimes more rapidly. And the body's stress response system, governed by the hormone cortisol, tends to become dysregulated, producing chronically elevated levels of a compound that, over time, suppresses testosterone, narrows blood vessels, disrupts sleep, and depletes the drive and confidence that used to feel natural. The result of all of this compounding together is something many men describe in almost identical terms: feeling tired without having done much, mentally foggy, emotionally disconnected, physically muted, like living in a body that's present but not fully switched on. What I want you to understand is that this is not an inevitable or irreversible state. It is a biological condition with identifiable causes and, importantly, points of intervention. The body does not simply stop responding, it responds to the right signals. And clove, specifically eugenol, provides several of those signals simultaneously. When eugenol enters your system consistently, it begins to work on the three primary systems most responsible for that feeling of decline, vascular function, stress physiology, and sleep quality. Let me take each one in turn. The 60-second chewing method, how to do it correctly before we go further into the science. Let me give you the practical method, because how you chew clove matters as much as whether you chew it. This is the approach I walk my patients through, step by step. Step 1. Select 2 to 3 whole dried cloves, not clove powder, whole dried cloves. If you have access to organic, choose that. If not, any quality dried whole clove from a reputable source will deliver the eugenol content you need. The powdered form loses a significant portion of the volatile oil, the very component that carries the therapeutic benefit. Step 2. Place 1 or 2 cloves at the back of your mouth, between your molars. Bite down gently until you feel it crack. The moment it splits open, you'll taste the oil, that characteristic warmth and spice. That is eugenol making contact with your mucous membranes. Absorption has already begun. Step 3. Do not rush this. Let the oil spread through your mouth. Breathe slowly and deliberately through your nose. For the first 30 seconds, simply hold the cracked clove in place and allow your saliva to dissolve the released oil naturally. This allows for maximum absorption through the oral mucosa. The lining of your mouth is highly vascularized, which means compounds absorbed here enter the bloodstream quickly and efficiently. Step 4. After 30 seconds, begin chewing gently and slowly. The goal is to continue releasing the remaining eugenol oil without grinding the material so finely that it becomes difficult to manage. Chew for another 30 seconds, allowing the oil to coat the gum tissue and the base of the tongue. Then swallow or dispose of the remaining fibrous material. Both are equally effective. What matters is the oil, and you've absorbed it. That's 60 seconds. That's the entire method. Some people notice effects within minutes, a gentle warmth in the chest, a sense of calm clarity, a subtle but real shift in how their body feels. Others may need several days of consistent practice before the cumulative physiological effects become noticeable. This is normal. You are not triggering a pharmacological spike. You are supporting a biological process, and biological processes respond to consistency, not urgency. Timing. When to chew for maximum benefit, the timing of this practice matters. And I want to give you specific guidance based on both the physiology and the feedback I've gathered from patients over years of clinical observation. I recommend 2 sessions each day. The first in the evening, approximately 60 minutes before you intend to sleep. Here's the biological reasoning. As evening approaches, the body's nervous system is designed to transition from its active, alert state, governed by the sympathetic nervous system, toward its restorative recovery state, governed by the parasympathetic system. This transition is what allows the body to enter deep restorative sleep. In many men over 60, this transition is impaired. Cortisol remains too high. The nervous system stays too activated. Sleep is shallow, fragmented, or simply insufficient. Clove contains a second key compound alongside eugenol, beta-caryophyllene. This molecule interacts with receptors in the central nervous system, specifically the endocannabinoid receptors that regulate mood, anxiety, and nervous system tone. When beta-caryophyllene binds to these receptors, it helps quiet an overactivated stress response. Cortisol levels ease, muscle tension releases, racing thoughts settle. The result is a more seamless transition into deep sleep, which matters enormously for hormonal health. Testosterone is not produced during the day. It is synthesized during deep sleep, specifically during the slow wave and REM stages that many men over 60 are not reaching consistently. When sleep quality improves, testosterone production follows. The two are inseparably linked. The second session, in the morning, before eating. After a night of fasting, the body is in a slightly more acidic, internally contracted state. Circulation is slower than it will be midday. Chewing clove first thing in the morning helps jumpstart vascular dilation and provide the circulatory system with an early signal to open and activate. Many men who adopt this practice report feeling more mentally sharp, more physically ready, and more motivated to move their bodies, whether that means a morning walk, light exercise, or simply showing up to the day with more presence and energy. Together, these 2 daily sessions create a rhythm, a consistent biological signal that tells the body's vascular, hormonal, and nervous systems to stay calibrated toward vitality rather than decline. Clove A&D, the stress system. Understanding cortisol, I want to spend more time on one of the most insidious contributors to the decline men feel after 60, one that is rarely named clearly enough, chronic cortisol elevation. Many men I've spoken with tell me that their stress is manageable. Life is okay. Nothing dramatically wrong. And yet they feel empty, fatigued, unmotivated, disconnected from their desire and their drive. What they don't realize is that chronic stress doesn't have to be dramatic to be damaging. The minor, persistent stressors of daily life, financial concerns, health anxieties, family responsibilities, the accumulated weight of decades of responsibility, keep the adrenal glands in a low-level state of activation. Cortisol is released not in the acute useful bursts it was designed for, but in a steady, prolonged drip that the body was never intended to manage. When cortisol stays chronically elevated, the downstream consequences are significant. Testosterone is suppressed, directly and measurably. Blood vessels remain in a more constricted state. Sleep architecture is disrupted. The drive, confidence, and sense of aliveness that are associated with healthy testosterone levels quietly erode. Many men in their 60s are not experiencing the effects of age so much as the effects of years of accumulated cortisol burden. Beta-caryophyllene, the second active compound in clove, addresses this pathway directly. By binding to the endocannabinoid system's CB2 receptors, it modulates the stress signaling cascade, telling the nervous system at a deep level that the threat has passed. Cortisol levels decrease. Testosterone, no longer suppressed, has room to rise back toward its natural baseline. Men who begin this practice consistently often describe the experience in similar terms: a feeling of weight lifting from the chest, mental clarity returning gradually, then more decisively, an emotional steadiness that had been absent for longer than they realized. And alongside that, a quiet return of desire, of motivation, of the feeling of being present in their own life. This is not placebo. This is the nervous system returning to a more functional baseline, and it begins with a 60-second habit. Clove A&D Oral Health, the overlooked gateway there, is one more dimension of Clove's benefit that I consider critically important, and it is the one most commonly overlooked in conversations about natural health. Let me ask you a question I ask many of my patients. How is your gum health? If that question surprises you in this context, let me explain why I ask it. The mouth is not a separate biological compartment from the rest of the body. It is an entry point. The oral cavity is richly supplied with blood vessels, and the gum tissue, when compromised by bacterial overgrowth or chronic low-grade infection, becomes a direct pathway through which inflammatory compounds and bacteria enter the systemic circulation. Research has demonstrated over decades of accumulating evidence that poor oral health is meaningfully associated with cardiovascular disease, impaired vascular function, and markers of systemic inflammation. The mechanism is straightforward. Bacteria from diseased gum tissue enter the bloodstream, trigger an immune response, promote inflammation in vessel walls, and accelerate the vascular dysfunction that undermines energy, circulation, and intimate performance. When I ask men about their gum health, and they mention that their gums bleed occasionally during brushing, or that they've had recurring minor infections, or that their dentist has mentioned early periodontal issues, that information matters to me clinically. It is not a cosmetic concern, it is a vascular concern. This is where chewing whole clove provides a benefit that goes well beyond its systemic effects. Clove oil is one of the most potent natural antimicrobial agents documented in the scientific literature. It has been used for centuries and validated in modern research for its ability to inhibit the bacteria responsible for periodontal disease, reduce gum inflammation, and support the integrity of oral tissue. When you chew a whole clove, the unol-rich oil coats the teeth, gums, the spaces between the teeth and the soft tissue of the mouth, delivering antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory activity directly to the tissue most vulnerable to bacterial colonization. Many men who begin this practice report within the first week that their breath is fresher, their gums feel less tender, and the minor bleeding they had come to accept as normal begins to reduce. But the deeper benefit is systemic. When the oral environment is cleaner, when the bacterial channel from mouth to bloodstream is closed, the systemic inflammatory burden decreases. Circulation improves, vascular function improves, and the organs that depend most on consistent high-quality blood flow, the heart, the brain, and the erectile tissue, begin to receive what they have been missing. This connection between oral health and intimate performance is not widely discussed, but it is real, it is documented, and it is one more reason why this small daily habit carries consequences far beyond what its simplicity might suggest. The timeline. What to expect A&D when I want to give you a realistic, grounded sense of what consistent practice with this method can produce, and when. In the first 7 days, most men who follow this consistently report subtle but real changes, a warmth in the chest or lower abdomen after each session, slightly cleaner oral sensation, a modest improvement in mental clarity, thoughts that feel less sluggish, attention that's a little sharper. Sleep quality begins to shift. It may take slightly less time to fall asleep. And some men notice they are waking less during the night. Energy during the day feels marginally more even without the midday crash that had become routine. Some men begin to notice the return of morning arousal, a reliable indicator that testosterone production during sleep is improving. By the end of the second week, the changes tend to become more pronounced and more consistent. Circulation improvements become more noticeable, a warmth in the extremities, more ease during physical activity, a sense of physical readiness that had been absent. Sleep is deeper and more restorative. Cortisol's grip on daily experience begins to ease. Mental clarity is sharper and more sustained. At the 30-day mark, many men describe a qualitative shift that is difficult to attribute to any single change, because it isn't a single change. It is the cumulative result of better circulation, lower inflammation, improved sleep, rising testosterone, and a nervous system that has had 4 weeks of daily signals telling it to return to balance. Physical performance improves. Intimate performance, both the desire and the physical capacity, returns often more fully than men expected. Energy is sustained through the day. Partners notice. And men describe something that I hear again and again in my practice: I feel like myself again. That phrase carries more weight than it might appear to, because feeling like yourself, having the energy, the presence, the drive that you associate with your own identity is not a luxury. It is the foundation of a life lived fully. 3 rules for making this last the method works when you work with it. Consistency is not optional. It is the entire mechanism. Let me give you 3 principles to make this a permanent part of your biology's support system. First, make chewing clove as non-negotiable as brushing your teeth. It takes 60 seconds. Keep a small container of whole dried cloves in your bathroom, your bedside table, your kitchen, your car. Remove all friction from the habit. The men who see results are the ones who do this every day, not the ones who try it twice and wait for a signal. Second, move your body every day. You do not need to run. You do not need to lift heavy weights. A 20 to 30 minute walk done consistently does more for vascular health, insulin sensitivity, and testosterone than most people realize. Movement is one of the most potent biological signals available to us. Pair it with the clove practice, and the effects are synergistic. Third, Protect your sleep architecture. The hormonal recovery that happens during deep sleep is irreplaceable. No supplement, no habit, no morning routine can compensate for chronically poor sleep. In the hour before bed, reduce screen exposure, keep your bedroom cool and dark, and use the evening clove session as a deliberate signal to your nervous system that it is time to shift into recovery mode. These conditions are not luxuries. They are the environment in which testosterone is made. Final message from Dr. William L.I. Let me close with what I consider the most important thing I've said today. The decline in energy, vitality, and drive that so many men experience after 60 is not their fault. It is not weakness. It is not destiny. It is the predictable result of biological systems that have been running in a suboptimal environment. Too much inflammation, too much cortisol, too little nitric oxide, too little deep sleep for too long. And the remarkable thing about those systems is that they are responsive. They are waiting for the right conditions to recover. They do not need to be forced. They need to be supported. What I've shared with you today is one of the simplest, most accessible, and most scientifically grounded starting points I know. 2 compounds, eugenol and beta-caryophyllene, working simultaneously on vascular function, stress physiology, sleep quality, oral health, and hormonal balance. Delivered through 60 seconds of mindful daily practice. Available at any grocery store for a cost that is essentially nothing. This is not magic. I want to be clear about that. There is no shortcut here, and I would not insult your intelligence by pretending otherwise. What there is real biology, the body's own systems responding to the right signal, given consistently and with intention. I have watched men in their 60s, 70s, and beyond recover a quality of vitality that they had genuinely stopped expecting. Not because they discovered an expensive secret, but because they committed to a simple daily practice and gave their biology the time it needed to respond. That is available to you. Tonight, go to your kitchen, find 2 whole cloves, hold them in your hand for a moment, and then chew them slowly, deliberately for 60 seconds. Let the eugenol do its work. Let your body receive the signal. And do it again tomorrow and the day after. Because the body always wants to heal. It always wants to function. It is always, at some level, looking for the right input to begin the work of recovery. Your job is simply to provide it. If this message gave you something useful, a new way of thinking about your biology, a concrete step you can take tonight, please share it with the men in your life who need to hear it. A friend, a brother, a father. These conversations matter, and the information you've just received could change the direction someone else's health is heading. Leave a like so this reaches more people who are ready for it. Subscribe and turn on notifications for upcoming content on natural approaches to vascular health, hormonal function, sleep, and the science of living well across every decade. And leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what resonated. If you're ready to begin, type "I'm ready" in the comments, because that commitment, stated out loud, is the beginning of a different story for your health. I'm Dr. William Li, and I'll leave you with this. Life after 60 is not a conclusion. It is a chapter, and what it contains is still being written. Your biology is not finished with you. It is waiting for you to give it the signal that you are not finished with it either. Chew, heal, rise.